Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering. Here we have Matt on Eureka against possibly one of his toughest matchups, though it's rarely seen. This Death Shadow build, black and blue, counter spells, discard, and a very solid board presence. A really low to the ground, effective Delver strategy. You've got Delver, Death Shadow, Gurmag Angler, Street Wraith with Reanimate. It's basically a Delver deck with a bunch of extra Delvers. And we see here all of the goods except for the mana, which John has been able to deny here on the first turn with that Wasteland. Now, Matt could still top deck a Soul Land and completely ruin this situation, so I'd imagine Show and Tell is going to end up being the pick. You're totally fine with Matt using mana for an Impulse off of a Lotus Petal. I mean, that's actually a pretty favorable trade for Death Shadow, and it is, in fact, the Show and Tell. Matt cracking Lotus Petal for a Preordain. He does find a land. I don't know that I do that. That's a tough one. I'd have to actually consider that. It's like you're not likely to win this game, and it's a question of whether or not you're going to be able to win going down that Lotus Petal. If there's a land on top of your deck and you draw, then you can use that for the Preordain without going backwards. Let me know how you would play that. A Thoughtseize here. We see a Force of Will being used. That's protecting Gristlebrand and Eureka. John's life total. A resource that he is looking to use. Oh, and that always feels devastating when you Force of Will trying to protect your hand, and then they have another discard spell. You've already lost 2 cards from your hand, and now here comes another Thoughtseize here. Gonna grab the Impulse, leaving a Force of Will and a Gristlebrand. And at this point, it's a exercise in creative writing to try and figure out how Matt can win. We're talking about like a Soul Land and a Show and Tell off the top. Something along those lines, but he's facing down now this 4/4 Death Shadow. Sends. We have a cycled Street Wraith pre-combat. Or pre-damage, not pre-combat. Could have been worth reanimating a Street Wraith. If you draw the reanimate off of the Street Wraith, I mean, the trickiness there may have given Matt an extra draw step. If John did have a... And now we've got a Force of Negation stopping this Eureka. So ultimately Matt drawing into the mana, but John able to hold on with that extra counter magic. It's a tough matchup. I mean, you're talking about discard and counter magic and a quick clock. That is pretty much exactly what you need to beat this type of deck. If you just try and go faster than Eureka Tell, a lot of the time they're going to have the counter magic to stop you. Whereas this type of build is pretty fast. I mean, Death Shadow can get you out of there in a hurry, but it also has the ability to fight on the stack and, most importantly, disrupt the hand. It's really why Eureka Tell exists, is because of Veil of Summer. Eureka's been available for a very long time. Really was not worth running green in a Show and Tell build. You were better off with red for sneak attack previously, but the fact that Veil of Summer is such a incredibly powerful card makes it worthwhile. It's actually right now, I think Matt's on 3 copies in the main with one of his more recent adjustments running days. I'm not sure what this build that we're seeing on camera is made up of. Day's a card that Sneak and Show players have been playing with on occasion, giving you a little bit more of a... I mean, it's a little bit of an all-in, but it also gives you the ability to counter stuff in the early game without wasting your Force of Wills. So if your opponent does cast some really troublesome 2-drop and you're not ready to win, dazing their Thalia or their defense grid or something that is going to be a problem in the early game, definitely a lot better than having to use a Force of Will on that. And Force of Negation, not really a particularly good card in Eureka Tell, as you can't protect your combo with it. You're always comboing off, or you're at least casting your spell at sorcery speed, your Show and Tell or your Eureka. I don't anticipate anybody trying to run a ley line to speed things up. Some of you know what I'm talking about there. We've got a Ponder for Matt. Note the basic island. He's going to look to potentially just drop basic lands only this game. Oh, we're keeping this straight. All right, so Ponder. A little bit of rearranging there. And John is not doing anything on his first turn, just a fetch land. I almost said Jund Shadow, but this is actually the black-blue build, which is incredibly strong. Now, Jund prior, when Deathrite Shaman and Gataxian Probe were in the format, was a 3-color deck. You had some access to green, mostly because of you're running Deathrite Shaman, so it might as well. And we've got a Carpet of Flowers. That is going to push past Daze pretty effectively. And wow, actually prompts a Force of Will from John, the 1-mana sorcery speed spell getting fought over. But that enchantment would have stuck around and created quite an advantage. Both allowing Matt to cast his bombs, but also giving him the ability to potentially fight over them as well, opening up mana for things like Veil of Summer and paying for days. I mean, even Spell Pierce. And a Hymn to Torok while Matt is tapped out and he Force of Wills, still down 2 cards, but it's of his choosing. Oh, and he's got to pass the turn. Ooh, that is rough. So Matt Force of Willing to protect his hand, but his mana base not improving. That that Carpet of Flowers, much more crucial than we may have initially guessed. And that is the thing about mana denial, is there are some games where it doesn't really do very much, and there's other games where their hand was only keepable because of, say, a Carpet of Flowers, or in Vintage, a Black Lotus or a Mock Sapphire, or something along those lines that, your opponent plays a Soul Ring and you mental misstep it, and it's like, hey, congratulations, you actually just won the game, because the whole hand was contingent on that actually holding up. And it looks like Carpet of Flowers may be that card this game. Maybe Matt's deck will bail him out with some additional mana. So John has won this first game. He has Hymn to Torocking, hitting a Gristlebrand and a Cunning Wish, leaving Matt's prospects looking pretty grim. He's got a decent-sized Death Shadow here and a Narset, and that is a big problem. Matt's mana base in need of help, and now Brainstorm and Ponder not going to be able to help him find what he's looking for. If he had a really full grip of, well, just 2 Show and Tells and a Brainstorm. Brainstorm, a complete brick here, would allow him to draw 1 and put 2 back from his hand. A play that sometimes you'll make when you have like a full grip. But yeah, this is gruesome. Matt actually in striking distance of lethal, when you're sitting at 12 life or below, Death Shadow could potentially bring themselves down to 1 life. And this is going to do it as Death Shadow crosses the finish line. John says, still got all Ds. No chance. Even if you drew it, I still had 3 counter spells. But that is probably the toughest matchup for Eureka, I would argue. I mean, I've played both sides of the table in this matchup. And, if I had to win the match, I think I probably take Death Shadow, despite not being one of those decks that's super well respected in the meta. Mostly because there are so many other great Delver variants. It is almost tailor-made to win this type of matchup. It makes it a very interesting choice in our meta, as there's more than a couple of Omniscience players. That is all for this one, but don't worry, there is a lot more. You can check out our older videos, and we're always putting out new videos from ELD's Time Vault Games in Bellingham, Massachusetts. If you want to help the channel, of course, you can like, subscribe, share, tap that notification bell so you can know the next time our new videos come out. Thanks for watching.